The following is intended for mature audiences only. Discretion is advised.
This is a Geek Bro podcast. What's up, besties? This is episode 44 of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes, and I am still the second part of that title. Oh boy, I am so excited about today's episode. Today's episode is Kyle Clark. Kyle is a very funny stand-up comedian and podcaster. He has 3 comedy albums, Pizza Night, I'm a Person, and Absolute Terror, that are out on his comedy record label. He's the host of the podcast This Is Rad, as well as the horror movie podcast Everything is Scary. And he's also the producer of the Jackie and Laurie Show on Maximum Fun. This episode is so fun. We talk about everything, music, we talk about movies, we talk about comedy, we reminisce on the old Meltdown days, and so much more. Kyle is such a genuinely awesome person, and I've always considered him to be my stand-up comedy big brother, because he's one of the few people that I've met that I want to impress when I'm on stage, and I can't thank him enough for that. I really think that you guys are going to love this episode, so without further ado, please enjoy the very rad Kyle Clark. Hey everybody, this is Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes. Hey guys, guess what? I'm Mike Valdes, and today I have a really amazing guest with me, the very funny, the very talented Kyle Clark.
Hello.
What's up, man?
How's it going, sir?
It's going well, dude. Yeah, man. I'm super excited to have you. It's been way too long since we've seen each other, and I'm so excited that we finally get to see each other in these weird circumstances.
Yeah. I always figured his face would be on a TV the next time I saw him, but I assumed it would be some sort of weird Ninja Turtle style world takeover.
Yeah.
There'd just be Mike Valdes flags everywhere, and he runs the Foot Clan now.
Oh man, you think I'm gonna be Danny from the Ninja Turtles?
Or more like you know, one of those stories where it's always the guy you least suspect who takes over the world. You're such a kind man that I can see him just going full like, all right, everybody smile, but first get in the cage. I'm on to you, Mike. That's what this episode is about. I'm blowing it wide open.
I would never do that, ever. That's amazing. So the first question I like to ask all of my guests before we get started is, can you please tell our listeners where you grew up?
I grew up in Simi Valley, California. Well, I was born in Van Nuys, and then I lived my first 5 years in Camarillo, California, and then moved to Simi Valley. And I've been, with exception, the years I was in school and stuff like that, and I work and travel a lot, but been based out of Simi Valley.
Yeah, man.
A little suburban Southern California town in Ventura County, right on the LA County line.
Right. Simi Valley is where the Poltergeist house is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have the Poltergeist house. We came up with that real bad verdict for the Rodney King trial. And,
yes.
What's our third thing? There's another one. Oh, and the Manson caves are here. Like Spawn Ranch is just off
goodness.
the city property.
Oh my gosh, man, that's insane.
I used to get the Poltergeist house and the Amityville horror house confused because when I was a kid and didn't know horror movies,
right? So
they were always like, "Oh, the Poltergeist house is here." So I was always looking in town trying to find the Amityville house, and was always like very upset that I couldn't find it. And then years later, saw Poltergeist. I was like, "Oh, it just looks like my house." Now I get it.
Just looks like my house.
Like I think it's part of why, because I saw Poltergeist for the first time only maybe like 5-6 years ago. It was just always one of those ones where like I was not a horror fan as a kid. And then by the time I got into horror, I was like, I'm going to watch, Steven Spielberg horror movie. How good could that be? And then it turns out years later, pretty good.
Yeah.
and really kind of came into when I started to really appreciate Tobe Hooper.
Yes.
Like that I went back and was like, okay, I know people kind of go back and forth on this, but I definitely see, I think the reasons that it's so effective as a horror movie. Sorry to overtake this shit with you asking a very innocent question.
That's completely fine. That's why I have you on.
But I think that balance is sort of what makes it such a successful movie.
Of course.
You get, that mix of childish wonder, but also like the real no holds kind of surrealist nightmare stuff that Tobe Hooper's so good about.
Right. Absolutely. I don't think I saw that movie until recently as well, just because I always like to watch all the movies before Halloween Horror Nights.
I was about to say, shout out to the boys and girls working Halloween Horror Nights and get everything set up. That entire crew, I think that is maybe one of the greatest mazes they've ever done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think that maze is a goddamn masterpiece. Oh, because you have the Florida ones, you get the 2 floor mazes.
Yes. Yeah.
I have a couple of friends who have now they got TV money, and they are also young horror nerd writers in the industry who flew to Florida for a weekend to go to horror nights and then fly back. And I hate how much they told me that. And I was like, oh, I hate how much I think that sounds like a great idea. I love it. Some people go for Star Wars Land or to see some cool thing or head to that. Like, nope, I just hear that your mazes are bigger and have 2 floors.
It's the best. I haven't gone to the one out in Los Angeles, but it would be cool because you guys have different stuff as well.
We have different stuff. Ours is very much almost entirely based on intellectual properties. That's
right.
Like not that I haven't done too much research, but I'm fascinated with the Florida version because it has all the mascots stuff.
Yes,
it's fascinating to me because I think part of it is that because there's kind of like two big ones with Scary Farm and Horror Nights,
right?
And like both are transcendently wonderful in very different ways, and they have different design philosophies and different approaches to maze design, and their characters act in different ways and have different kind of like ways that they're set to act. And so it's just always been interesting to me because like both are my favorite thing in the world collectively. And if I have to make a choice, like I'm always going to pick the slightly more indie angle, so I always lean a little more towards kind of the handmade, Scary Farm feel.
Right.
But that's kind of what fascinates me about the Florida Horror Nights is that like you get a little bit of both of those things. You get some of the kind of handmade, more original pieces along with. I mean, like the property stuff is amazing. When they really crush it. And I've been in a few in the last couple of years. I think the Poltergeist was transcendent. I think the Us maze was truly
that was great.
Surprised me how good it was. Like that could have been amazed that you did okay and just threw a bunch of people in red suits and called it a day. And instead they really went the extra mile with that one in a way that impressed me. Did you guys have the From Dusk Till Dawn one we 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah.
I was shocked how good that one was.
Yeah, man. Oh my gosh. That's one of my favorites of all time, actually. So there was that one. And I want to say another one that was one of my favorites was American Werewolf in London. That was a really good one.
That was great.
And
the other
also,
one that always surprised me was the La Llorona one. That was actually one of the original mazes.
Yes.
It's still maybe to me like the gold standard for the Universal mazes.
Absolutely. I believe they did it twice here in Orlando. Yeah. And then later on they made a movie for it. So,
it's an old Mexican folktale.
Right.
So actually the maze has nothing to do with the movie.
Yeah, right.
The movie is actually based on, I guess, like Diego Luna helped design it, which is one of those things. Like he's maybe one of the only celebrities who I ever want to meet because I have one very specific question. Which is like, hey, how did you get attached to designing this, and why did you design the best maze and then quit? Like you either need to tell me what happened and say it was in name only, or you got to quit acting and make mazes.
That's amazing. Just to ask you the next question here, what kind of kid would you say that you were growing up? Like who did you sit with at the lunch table, that kind of thing?
I don't know. I was like an odd duck. Like I would sort of sit with whoever, like at the lunch table. Like I don't know that I developed like a crew until I was in like maybe middle school. I had like friends, but I was always that guy with like friends. But then like not all of that friends were super keen on this guy hanging out.
Yeah.
I think as a kid I was real scared and real imaginative, which is a terrifying combination to have as a kid.
Sure.
So it was a lot of imagination, and then I was also like pretty obsessed with media, so I was also like way into imagination, way into stories, and way into like playing pretend and doing stuff, but also like fucking love TV. Like Simpsons since birth. And for the longest time, if something was animated, it didn't matter what the content was, you have my attention. Whether it's a Nick Jr. thing or weird anime that I'm happening to find on TV or like whatever it is. Like I remember like being real fascinated by the idea of the movie Bebe's Kids.
Okay.
Because it was an animated movie for adults. And I was like, what? Is that legal? Like, and so I think a lot of like kind of curiosity about stuff and maybe not always like the resources to like fully indulge those curiosities, but also like always curious, always into things. Was obsessed with dinosaurs, loved Jurassic Park.
Same here.
Was a very much a sci-fi kid. Loved a lot of sci-fi. Didn't understand what Star Trek was, but goddamn it, they were on a spaceship, so I was on board. And any sci-fi TV shows or weird adventure things, or like I was a big Xena and Hercules watcher. nerdily inclined in all the ways that they have made sure that like to get rid of as far as like modern nerd culture goes.
Yes.
Like they're just like, no, you were into Back to the Future. I'm like, but I'm pretty sure I like this syndicated show that ran on channel. No. So like I loved anything like the weird, whatever you enjoyed as a kid, I enjoyed the off-brand version of it because I just wanted to dig deeper and go more. Like Power Rangers, I always think of as like, I liked Power Rangers, so that means I'm digging deep into Beetleborgs. I'm digging into VR Troop, into the tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills.
Nice.
It was a real show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, I missed a lot of the like tenets that, you know, are kind of the big ones, but like loved a lot of stuff really passionately, you know, and it kind of sort of all over the place, but definitely just like an excited, imaginable, probably difficult young person.
It's so funny too, because your knowledge of pop culture blows even my mind, because like because a lot of people who know me, especially as I am on stage, I'm a very pop culture kind of person, and I still remember this to this day, man. There was a show that you guys did at Meltdown called Is Rad. And
my baby.
Yeah, it was an amazing show. And
it's the only show I've had fail 3 separate times in 3 different iterations, and I'm still like, we'll get that 4th one. We're gonna figure this out. It's
I loved it.
People who watch it seem to enjoy it. It has resoundingly failed on 3 separate runs at 3 different forms, and I'm still like, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna get this shit figured out.
Yeah, I love the idea. And like, so there was a part in the show that was basically like stump Kyle. And it was
it was win Kyle Clark's dignity. I did win Ben Stein's money, but against the guest, the co-host, and the audience.
Yes. Oh my goodness, man. I mean, you knew everything, even down to like Cool Juice was what Steve Urkel drank to become Stefan Urkel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what else would it be?
Yeah.
Which is different than Goo Punch, which is what Goo started a business to sell to try to impress Melanie.
Yes. I love it. Oh my goodness, Goo Punch. That reference was for one person, and it was me. I love it. Also, growing up, you were kind of a music guy, right? You were in a bunch of bands.
I got into music when I was in like 6th or 7th, or maybe 5th or 6th grade, and it was a weird process because it started the way it does for every young person when you get into the first CD you owned, which of course is always going to be the Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, the game show soundtrack,
right?
Featuring Rockapella, Tito Puente, and the Three Woodsmen, a band that, as far as I can tell, only exists on that CD and are probably the producers of the show. But you know, and from there, kind of like I was a bit. I think it's why have such an affinity for '90s music in general, kind of across the board. Is that was kind of the first times I was getting aware of just music in general as a thing.
Right.
Like was always kind of aware it was out there, but was really like all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, there's all these different artists and all these different things, and then was kind of this like omnivore, and then kind of discovered MTV, and MTV has such a weird mixture in the 90s of like the most mainstream trash and crashed up against some of the most subversive television I've ever seen. Starts with Liquid Television, ends with Syphil and Ollie and Daria. Also, you know, has all this dumb bullshit in between. And I think that like in some ways like that colored a lot of my like palette and appreciation, where it's like appreciate all, have reverence for none. And then that changed when I got into like 8th grade, because that's when I kind of discovered punk rock, because I was like fat and awkward and huge, and was just an ordeal to be around, and felt super uncomfortable in my own body, and you know just in general felt very uncomfortable all of the time. And then I remember very distinctly like looking at something about punk rock with some other awkward kids, and then seeing like some dude see the pictures of like punk rock guys, and it like freaked him out, and like a lightning bolt hit my brain where I'm like, wait a minute, we've developed a weapon. And so it went from like, oh, I'm not fat and awkward, I'm punk, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and that, you know, was the thing I leaned on hard. But also it's always funny to me because like the older I've gotten, the more I've realized that like my vision of like what becoming punk rock was and what the experience of becoming punk rock was are not necessarily the same, you know, and I'm grateful for what I ended up with because it's very much colored who I am. But like I didn't realize that for a lot of people, they just like bought that jacket and called it a day.
Right.
And for me, it was like, wait, you can build a whole lifestyle around a DIY culture where you don't have to like look at this stuff, and you can find a way to live your life without having to get the approval of the people who you already don't want to be around. And other people were like, I got the jacket, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's good because it led me into a much wider berth of interest. Like I love hardcore punk. Like, you know, it is some of my favorite shit in the world still. You know, when I hear a band that kind of harkens back to something crazy and heavy, like the first time I heard like Drug Church, I was just like, holy shit, these guys get it. These guys know what's up. Or like when I discovered like Fucked Up and found that there was like, wait, there's a version of like a punk band, but it's also like kind of dorky operettas along with it. Like, this is amazing. And I think that came from, you know, did you have like a person in your life, like an older person who theoretically wasn't your parents? Sometimes it's your parents. I find it sometimes sticks better when it's not your parents. Right. Who are just like, here's some bands to check out. You know, and they've usually got like a bias, and I find that bias often like colors the generations they influence.
Well, this is going to sound funny. Most people do have that person, but you know, and I don't know if you know this about me, the listeners know if they've listened, but I grew up in a very conservative Christian home, so I wasn't allowed very many things. But one thing that I did learn was there would always be these like poster board things at Christian bookstores that would say, if you like Jimmy Eat World, you'd love Stellar Cart. Or if you love Blink 182, you'd love Reliant K. And that's how I found out who the good bands were.
Okay, yeah,
no lie. So I'm like, oh, so if I go the opposite way, those are the bands that the Christian bands are trying to emulate. So.
Yeah. I always get I'm fascinated by that world of stuff, because by the time I learned because I have a real like affinity as an adult for like Christian hardcore. I mean, partially just because it's hardcore, but and especially like. It was like, because at first when it was like Reliant K or something like that, I'm like, this is lame. And then I found like Silent Planet and The Chariot.
Yes.
And even to a lesser extent, like an Under Oath or something is like a gateway to that.
Of course.
And like The Chariot especially, I was just like, wait a minute, you can't trick me. This is good. And I think it's because like when I was in high school, all of the traditional art programs that you're supposed to find refuge in as a weirdo had born-again Christians had already invaded.
Right.
It's like the band program and theater and all this shit. And so I had to just like bail out and go full music scumbag street punkery, because all the things that would have been a good influence on me were full of Jesus. And I was like, look, I'm not mad, but like, we're good.
Yes.
I've read far too much Sandman and Alan Moore and Preacher to like be on your team.
Right.
Like, I've seen the other option, and it seems like there's a lot of cool shit over there. So like, have a time. I'll be over here in Eatontown.
Yeah, dude, that's great. Tell me about some of these bands that you were in. Like, what skate parks did you play at? You know,
I don't think we ever played a skate park.
Really?
Like my early bands are so weird.
Okay.
I found almost all of the masters for the bands I was in high school like a while back. And I keep thinking about putting them on This Is Rad's Patreon.
Yeah, you should.
At some point. It's you know, it's an odd thing, like, because I laugh sometimes, like, I don't know if I'll ever care about anything as much as I cared about my first two bands in high school. Well, I was in a band that my best friend and the only drummer anybody knew and this other kid were in, and I kind of like conned my way into being the rhythm guitar player for a show, and there was no singer. They just played like Led Zeppelin songs instrumentally, and I would just like hit some chords because there's no second guitar in Led Zeppelin. Like, and then I got kicked out of that, and then shortly after I got kicked out of that band, that guitar player quit playing music to go make movies. And so then that drummer and bass player were like, well, you seem full of enthusiasm. And I was like, well, I got a bunch of songs. I got plans. And so we kind of hit the ground running. And almost a year to a day of the time we had played prior, like the next year we played as this new band, which was called The Doppler Effect. Originally with an E, eventually with an A.
Oh my gosh.
We had to change it at one point for legal reasons. It was literally my old joke to find a good band name. You either got to open up a history book or a science book and just pick a random word.
Yes.
So originally I wanted to call a band Endoplasmic Reticulum because of course I did. And then eventually we settled on the Doppler Effect. I forget it was between the Doppler Effect and I think the Overtones. Which sounded too much like the Deftones.
Yeah.
And so
or the Supertones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then. And that band was like a bluesy jam band, but that was also punky, but by way largely of like the Pixies and the Velvet Underground.
Yeah.
Because like those were like when I was finding punk, it wasn't like, oh man, I love the Dead Kennedys. I was like, Lou Reed's Rock and Roll Animal seems neat, and also like the Pixies and the Sonic Youth are a thing I like. So I've decided they're punk. And you know, like my favorite band for most of high school was the Eels because they were sad but also noisy, and I was like, holy shit, they found both. The two things I like: lots of obnoxious sounds and also talking about sadness. And I think that's why the emo bug never got me. Is I already had my band to be sad to, and then that opened up, you know. Like I remember a girl showing me Elliott Smith or me discovering, you know, any number of other things, you know, and then eventually kind of getting sucked over into the folk punk stuff. But that's like later. But like that first run, I'm into like all these like noisy, you know, 70s, 80s, 90s art rock bands. And then my bass player's favorite bands are like The Who, and our drummer is really into like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Rage. I think like Rage is like the band we could all agree on.
Right.
And he's in like Jack Johnson, and then he slowly got into Jesus. And so he was like, what about we did some Newsboys covers? And I just like, how about no?
When the toast is burning.
And I'm just like, sorry, friend. What's that? A third Pixies cover? Okay.
I love it.
I'm trying to think what that. Well, that band actually had a weird set of covers because we did Magic Carpet Ride, and what were other like go-to ones live? Oh, we did Last Stop This Town from the Eels, and what was our other go-to cover? We had like one more in the run of ones, and then that band. I was in bands that played a lot of parties. Like a lot of kids were like, "It's our birthday, play our party."
Okay.
And you know, so we would play a lot of like our friends' birthday parties. We needed to figure out how to pad shit out. So we like had a vamp where we would do the you know DCGC kind of run,
right?
And we do like the Joker from Steve Miller, and then go into like Summer Lovin' from Grease, and the bass player who was like the lead singer would sing the Danny Zuko parts, and I'd sing the Sandy parts in a falsetto, you know, and shit like that. And so, and that band was together. We did a full length album and put that out, and it's the thing that I would put out. It's funny because the production values are the most 2002 thing you've ever heard.
Right.
It is just a digital, you know, medium tier Pro Tools. It's the finest digital recording 2002 could offer. My brother and I have ongoing, because my brother's a musician and sound engineer too.
Yeah.
And we recently had many conversations about how, like, you know, 10 years ago, it's crazy to think how expensive, you know, I'm running, you know, all my audio for all the quarantine episodes of our show through a Focusrite Scarlett single, and, you know, which, you know, you can buy for $50 used on Reverb. And at the same time, like, I remember trying to look into getting, you know, interfaces, you know, even in the days of the M box, where it was like, well, for $700 you can get the shitty one, right? And it's got all the security that will make it impossible to use, you know. And now that's just laughable. And even thinking back, you know, jumping back, that was 2010, you know, and so to jump back to 2002, you know, 8 years prior to that, like, it's insane to think about like what that band was recording on in a guy's house,
right?
And but it also kind of made me fall in love with stuff like, you know, like all the early OC punk records I'm kind of obsessed with, because they were all recorded in kind of like low rent garage studios or like small garage stuff in the burbs. And I think like when I got a little older, that really became one of my big obsessions with punk, was that early OC punk rock scene. Cause it's like 15-year-old kids going up to weird burnt out 40-year-olds with recording equipment and going, hey, we're going to make stuff that people will still listen to in 40 years. Like, right. This is fucking crazy. You know, I still listen to Living in Darkness. I'm just like, it's insane that this was recorded in 2 days in a garage in Orange County. And I have probably listened to this album 1,000 times. But so the production value on it is what it is. Also in that record, there's at least 2 songs that are the two where, like, most of the record I'd still put out and just be like, hey, it's what it is. There's 2 songs. One I don't love the idea of releasing because it's a song that is such a byproduct of a boy in a very specific time. It's all about how, like, video game girls are better than regular girls.
Okay.
And yeah, not great. Don't love it. But, like, again, it was written by a 15-year-old in 2001. I don't think 9/11 had happened before I wrote that song.
Right.
Like, let's put it that way. Like, that song is living in a different time.
Yes.
And it was one of the ones we cut from the set early on, because that's the thing that kills me about that band sometimes. Like, a lot of the songs, as I was like learning how to write songs, didn't get recorded because we'd already done that first record. That's literally, I think, like, it's 10 of maybe the first 12 songs I ever wrote are on that record. You know, we cut one, and one we cut while we were writing songs, and the rest of them, that is just what the record is. And so there's that one, and then there's another one called See Me CA that had a very contentious lifespan because it's the song I sang lead vocal on, and I was trying to do kind of like a Lou Reed Take a Walk on the Wild Side Dirty Boulevard kind of talk sing thing about how my town is boring.
Right.
And it is, my dad loves it.
Right.
And people find it charming now that I'm a 33-year-old man. You know, it's more okay now than it was then. And so it's a weird game there. But so that one, I'll put it out because people will laugh at it pretty aggressively. It's humorous. My girlfriend, I played part of it for her once, like, and she was just like, yeah, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And then that jumps to my second band, which was called, so that band breaks up because the drummer finds Jesus and can't be in a band with me, which was weird because like I was a like super straight edge good boy, and our bass player, my best friend, was like kind of growing into, he would grow up to have some problems, and those pieces were starting to become aware at that age.
Yeah.
And ultimately it was always so weird to me that like I was the bad one. But eventually me and he, my bass player, best friend growing up, was just a musical prodigy, incredible singing voice, crazy good bass player, just God's gift to music, truly. And we were kind of a writing duo. I did lyrics, and I would write, some stuff, or I'd throw lyrics at him and he put it together, and then I kind of figure out my part, but we kind of wrote songs together. It's also weird when I look at it now. I think he's like the only person I've had that crazy level of like a collaboration with. But he went on and played in like one of the big bands in town. Not big, but they were like the band that were always dubbed like the best of the bands, because there was this kid who played guitar for them who just like was the shredness little shredder on Planet Shred. He had long blonde hair, he had a long Penny Lane style, like furry floor length coat. Like they were a cool band. They were called Heresy. It's a good band name.
Heresy, that's great.
And then eventually he was like, hey, that's cool, but like we should do something. And by that point, he and I are on a steady diet of Social Distortion, Hot Water Music, and this brand new band that was sold to me originally as being a less good Hot Water Music, and they were called Against Me. And they had just put out this record called Reinventing Axl Rose like the year before, and it was like, oh man, these songs are great. Like, and look, they sound all lo-fi in this, and the kind of proto folk punky kind of stuff, and that little bit of like punky classic rocky hybrid was what that band was all about. We were called Letters from Memphis, and for forever we were looking for a drummer. And then one night we're at my friend's house. It was like the friend party house. And we're all standing outside doing whatever. And in the garage where our friend's band, that was their rehearsal space, we hear somebody just wailing on the drums. And it's not like technical, but it's just like, it's banging. Like it's the best kind of like noisy, fast punk rock drumming. And we have no idea who it is, because standing next to me is the drummer whose kid it is. So I'm just like, who the hell's playing drums if you're standing out here? Wow. And I walk inside, and it's this guy I've known forever. My buddy Kirby is just like blackout drunk, and he is just wailing on the drums. And he is just like a weird child prodigy. He's this tiny little guy. It's funny because he's almost my height now, but when we were younger, he was very small. Okay. He had giant hands, giant feet, tiny body, and then grew into being a monster now, and it's great. But he is, with his crazy long appendages, just like an octopus playing drums. Like, it's crazy. Right. Purple cartoon octopus. And so I had a drum kit at my house because my brother played. And so I was like, just come over and practice at our house. You can just play drums there. Like, and he's like, I don't have a kit. Like, we'll figure that out later. We need a drummer, and I like you more than I like the rest of the drummers in town.
Right.
And so the three of us played in that band, and some part of my heart will always went with that band when it died, because we were together for 11 months. We put out like 3 releases, played like 30 something shows, like did all this crazy shit in like less than a year. And it's like the most intense I've ever been about anything was just like that fucking band.
Yeah.
Because it was like me and basically my best friends, and we were in a band where I liked the music. Like, I'm getting to sing a little bit more. I'm getting better at playing. I've learned how to like do some solos and kind of get some stuff, and I've got kind of an identity musically of what I want to do, and we're all just trying to get as raspy, those Laura Jane Grace fucking vocals, just getting as off those first couple Against Me records as we can. Probably the reason we all have these like raspy tenors as adults, or these raspy baritones as adults. It's just,
probably
the damage I did to my throat at 16. And then that band fell apart because the other two guys kind of got a little more into partying than being in a band. And that made me, wrecked me for a while. And then eventually I put together in my 20s like a band called Lutheran Gun Club that is a whole other fucking run of stories. We We had 13 members across 5 years. We're the only two consistent members were me and my brother, with not a ton of like releases because I was just a hot mess in my late teens, early 20s, where every 5 minutes the band's going in a new direction. We're changing everything. This is all. I made the band wear uniforms for a while. I was a nightmare person.
Wow.
And then when that fell apart, I kind of got burnt on music. By the end of that band, everybody hated each other, including me and my brother. And I then kind of jumped from that. I did a folk album that still exists online. Occasionally Radsters find it. Then after that, kind of was like, okay, I'm going to get a camera and maybe try to do movies. And then movies was expensive. And so I was like, I guess I'll be a comedian.
Right.
That was way too much answer.
Honestly, though, I'm glad you answered that because and there was a lot of emotions in that answer, but it's just true because especially our first bands, we put so much of our heart into it. It's a feeling that I definitely can agree with, where it's
I have a weird, complicated relationship with it.
Right.
Because, like, when I started playing in bands was, like, and playing guitar around the start of the time, I was starting to write a lot, too, like, creatively. And I always have, like, a bit of guilt because, like, there was a guy who he and I were working on, like, a comic book. And he was an artist and I was a writer. And I'd been writing all these comic book scripts. And I was kind of getting a little bit known for these like funny little scripts that I would do, and people seemed to enjoy them. And then he started doing art for them. And I always had this kind of shitty guilt because like I kind of bailed on comics because like there was way more immediate gratification and girls in music than there was in like writing and comic books.
Sure.
And I laugh because like sometimes look back and go like, God, if I'd gone the other direction, like I feel like things really would have panned out. I look back to music time, and it's some of my favorite times in life, but also I'm sort of like, oh, man, I could have, like, a career now if I'd gone that other way. And I feel bad. I kind of bailed on that guy, and it's one of those things I always kind of live with and go like, oh, I wish I had played that different. And I've still never made a comic, so it's a real, like, thing that haunts me.
Yeah, but you definitely will. Knowing you, I'm sure you have a bunch of ideas and things like that.
I can't draw with guitar. Believe me, I've tried. It's ruined a Squire Stratocaster.
That's great. I want to move on into our next bit. Out of curiosity, what were your favorite snacks growing up?
Ooh, I mean, all of them. The ones that were in my mouth. I was a fat kid and enjoyed eating above all else. I would say a ham and cheese Hot Pocket was pretty high.
Yeah.
I loved a pizza bagel. I'm trying to think, like, kind of anything. I was a real, like, like omnivorous creature. I've never been a wildly picky eater.
Okay.
And as far as like snack foods and fast food and stuff like that go, like, I was following the trends as a big cartoon watcher. I was kept abreast of what new snack foods there were to try. So like when I saw Dunkaroos hit the scene, I was like, Mom, we got to get on this. That is a cup of frosting.
Yes.
Loved a Lunchables nacho situation.
Okay. Nacho situation. That's what they were called.
Those things.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think like what else were big jump offs, but like, loved a nerd. Enjoyed a sweet tart.
Yes.
I'm trying to think like what else. I believe it was 8th grade. They like, are you old enough that you remember when they used to let you have candy in school?
I wasn't allowed anything, Kyle.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You've got the added element there. But like, I'm like the last generation where like candy was like still running around in schools and sodas and stuff like that. It was a golden age.
Yeah.
And I remember very distinctly like our choir was always fucking hawking candy in middle school because they had to go places for events. So they had a good system because they just had those nice choir girls rocking around with bags of candy.
Yeah.
And it was like, this feels like the child version of some sort of weird mafia thing.
Right.
And so but they always had these weird bags of Reese's Pieces. And that's definitely what I got. And I'm still obsessed with Reese's Pieces. I'm definitely like a little less snack obsessed than I used to be. I love a snack, but I love a snack more abstractly now than I used to.
Sure.
But the Reese's Pieces, like we this year for Easter did the Reese's Pieces eggs instead of like chocolate eggs, like where they're the little hard candied shell ones. And those things are a goddamn revelation.
Man,
like,
I'm not
amazing.
even joking. That Reese's egg is amazing. It's the best.
Well, this is different than the Reese's egg because the Reese's egg, classic thing. But the Reese's Pieces egg.
Oh, I didn't know
like
that was a thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the new jam.
Okay.
Like, because those like, little candied eggs where it's like a hard candy shell on the outside and chocolate on the inside, like a candy M&M kind of thing. They have those, but it's Reese's Pieces on the inside.
No way.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That sounds great. I love it. So here's another thing we like to talk about on this show. Were you a cereal guy growing up?
I was for a little while, and then I grew to hate cereal to the point where I refused to eat it.
Really?
Because I had it every morning for breakfast for, the first 12 years of my life.
Oh my God.
And also we had a couple of runs that I still look back at and like, look, the 2020 quarantine is bad, but it's still not as bad as the year where my mom bought 2 of the Costco-sized boxes of Lost World Jurassic Park marshmallow cereal, and that's all we ate for seemingly forever.
Right.
And it's why when people are like, do you want Lucky Charms? My answer is much more aggressive than it needs to be, because like I cannot enjoy a non-chocolate-based marshmallow cereal.
Oh my gosh.
And I think I only like Count Chocula for religious reasons. Like,
right.
But beyond that, like they don't, I don't even think they're gross. They make me mad.
Oh
and I think
my
it's
goodness.
because of that. And I don't think I ever quite forgave. It's maybe only been in the last, since the first version of Retro Rad, because the first version of Retro Rad was called Saturday Morning, and which was on a Friday night. I'm bad at business. But I bought cereal and milk to have at the shows. We could eat cereal while we talked about cartoons and watch commercials and shit like that.
That's a great idea.
And like, it was a real mixed bag, because on the one hand, no one came, but on the other hand, Dave Clock came and he had a great time because he ate like 5 bowls of cereal.
Right.
I always distinctly just have a vision of like Dave Clock with like 2 empty bowls of cereal and a cereal with him, just watching the show, just being supportive, being a real friend, and just like loving cereal and just like. And at that, I remember like my girlfriend at the time and I going home and like finishing off the last of the cereal and going like, maybe cereal's good again. And now like I am picky, but I enjoy a cereal. I fucking love Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I actually bought a Costco box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch right before the shit went down.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, on every episode of this podcast, we like to review a box of cereal. Now, I know it's going to be really tough for us to review cereal right now just because we're on a Zoom meeting, but I figured we could use our imagination,
Okay, well, here, throw me some and I'll give some opinions.
Okay, so here we go. I actually like to get a specific cereal for my guest. And I like cereal that relates to my guest in some way, shape, or form. So May I propose a sidebar since we can't do that? Absolutely.
I'm going to throw out a cereal to you, and we're going to explore a very real problem in this world.
Okay.
One that's not as important as some other problems.
You're right.
Are you familiar with the current state / history of Rice Krispie Treats cereal?
I have not had the current state of it. The last time I had it, I was really young.
Okay, so you likely still had the good version.
Right.
So Cinnamon Toast Crunch has been doing a lot of heavy lifting in my life because my old comfort food was about 3 years ago. I impulse randomly at a Target, just walked past and bought a box of Rice Krispie Treats cereal because I'm like, oh, I never had this as a kid. I wonder what kind of bullshit is contained herein.
Right.
And brought it home. And I'll explain why in a moment, but it is maybe one of the most transcendent cereal experiences I've ever had.
Is it really?
So when you pour it out, the consistency, you are familiar with a Rice Krispie treat.
Absolutely.
It is sort of a puffed rice style thing. It contains a lot of air. Well, what they used to do, and I will get back to that key point, used to do is that they used to run and like basically spray like liquidized, melted marshmallow style, pure crystalline sugar across it to the point where it was no longer crispy and rice-like. It was glassy like meth.
Right.
It was that same way they look at fucking Heisenberg meth on Breaking Bad.
Yes.
You could have just old school Rice Krispie Treat cereal in there. And it was this beautiful thing. And it like kind of clinked like broken glass when it fell into your bowl. And like that got your blood flowing a little bit because you knew you were about to get the best sugar cereal experience you could have.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was like, if I had a hard month, sometimes I just go to Target, and sometimes you just got to buy a box of Rice Krispie Treat cereal and just like, go into a little bit of a Rice Krispie vendor.
Yeah.
And it's tough because sometimes when you say I'm going to go buy some meth, you have to forget that meth is a real thing and not just a thing you're saying in reference to cereal. So cut to at some point last year, I had a hell of a month. I was going to go through my little ritual, and I walked in and I bought my box and I poured it out, and again, I find that marshmallows in cereal have fucked me again because they no longer sell it like that form. It's no longer methy glass that's the greatest thing you can put in milk and put in your mouth. It is now just regular fucking Rice Krispies with tiny marshmallows mixed in.
That's so dumb.
It sucks. It sucks so bad, Mike.
There's no way that's good.
I threw the box away out of sadness and rage.
There's no way it's good. That doesn't sound
And I went back to go
all.
burn Target down, but instead, Cinnamon Toast Crunch had invented a side cereal called Churro Crunch. And I bought that, and everyone in this world is alive because that cereal exists. So I didn't
We've
have to
reviewed
end the
that
world
cereal
like a
too.
villain.
Yeah.
But that one's solid. So, but yeah.
Very good.
I just feel like I need to get the word out to anybody who does not know. Do not pick up Rice Krispie Treat Crunch.
I'm actually glad that you told me this because I've thought about getting it, but now I definitely won't.
Bullshit.
I love the your feelings on it. It's so good. But I chose this cereal for you here that I actually have it here with me. Usually I like to get a cereal that has something to do with my guest in some way, shape, or form. So I spoke with my sponsors over at Funko. Now, by sponsor, I mean that I like them and I buy all their products. And
it's like when I yell, "Shutter, give me money."
Right. And by spoke to, I mean that I tweeted them repeatedly and they didn't get back to me. So the cereal that I got for you is Funko brand Krampus cereal.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Okay. I was really worried there was going to be an Overwatch character on that box.
Why is that?
I was like, Mike, I thought you knew me.
No. Why would I do that? No, man, I definitely know you because
you're Funko and cereal. My heart's starting to beat a little.
Here's the thing, man.
Okay.
I think Krampus is perfect for you because you have like a Christmas personality, but you're also the devil at the same. No, I'm kidding.
Oh no, we get each other. You're high. I'm that's gonna be quote on the back of the VHS box of Kyle. He likes Christmas, but also the devil.
It's true. So, and also on the back here, you can see there's a little maze, and on the inside as well. If we open it, there's actually a little Krampus
mask,
little Krampus toy. Yeah, absolutely.
Ooh, a toy in the box.
Yeah, there's a toy in the box, a little Funko.
Do you remember when you could do the cutout masks on the backs of cereal boxes?
Yes.
And you could be Huey, Dewey, or Louie.
Yeah.
I always felt like there was a real shame no one robbed a bank in those. I don't know. Their personalities are kind of the same.
That's great. So I think it would be fun to review this cereal, but I think it'd be more fun to review this cereal as Krampus.
Okay.
So, again, we have to use our imaginations here.
I think Krampus, I feel like you want character work in a way where I'm just like, I don't know if I have that kind of voice in me.
I think you definitely do, man. We all know Krampus sounds like Sack Weldon.
See, I can't use Sack Weldon for that because I'm literally using Sack Weldon's voice for another character.
Are you really?
I'm working on. It's I'll burn it here a little bit, but it's just this character I've been doing to my family because my dad is way into like we're all way into the food of New Orleans. Not my mom, but we're big on New Orleans.
Yeah.
And my dad keeps a Cajun shake container. We have salt, pepper, and Cajun shake on our table. And he had to buy more. And occasionally my dad has to go to these weird back alley websites to buy very specific New Orleans-based food things for the house. And I turned into a guy who sells New Orleans-style seasonings out in an alley out of a suitcase like a drug dealer. But is constantly reminding you what you are doing isn't illegal. He just has a weird vibe.
I love it.
It's all just been like, I need to remind you that these spices, there is nothing illicit in them. There is no controlled substances. I just hang out back here. And so it seems like it is sketchier than it is. I have a business license. This is a food grade suitcase I had custom made to make sure that you are safe, which you are, because I am not a criminal. Now, what you are? What you mean?
I love it. I love it.
But, I'm Krampus and I like this cereal. I think the box art's fun. Despite maybe some of the key design flaws that deny empathy inside of Funko figures, I still find it kind of a festive design. I like that they didn't go hard after the Legendary film, even though it's the best representation of me in cinema still. I don't want to see everything go that way.
Yeah.
Feels unfair to folklorists. Why is it purple?
That is a good question. Why is it purple?
I can't help but feel like no, you're working too hard. It could have just been white, like you put snow on it. Bam, done. You went an extra step, and as Krampus, I must say, I'm a bit confused.
I love it. Well, Funko brand Krampus cereal, ladies and gentlemen. We did it. We did it. We didn't even eat it, and we did it.
Hope I didn't derail your segment too hard.
You're not derailing anything. This episode of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes is brought to you by the Crunch Cup. Save time in the morning by taking your cereal on the go. Simply add cereal to the inner cup, milk into the outer cup, screw on the lid, and you're ready to crunch. Eat cereal in the car, at your desk, or anywhere else you want. Go to thecrunchcup.com to purchase what I think is a genius invention and use the discount code MikeValdes10. That's Mike, M-I-K-E, Valdes, V-A-L-D-E-S, the number 10, to save 10% off of your order. You can also sign up for their monthly giveaway to win a year's supply of cereal. So what are you waiting for? Go to thecrunchcup.com and use promo code MikeValdes10 to save 10% off of your order. The Crunch Cup. It's better than spooning. This episode of Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes is brought to you by Real Good Foods. I am so excited to announce that Real Good Foods has launched their very first dessert item, ice cream. Real Good ice cream is the first ever super premium better for you ice cream. It's extra creamy, so there's no icy or chalky texture like other light ice creams, making it a real ice cream experience with real ingredients. Only 180 calories and 4 grams of sugar per serving. Real Good ice cream is sweetened by using allulose, which isn't like regular sugar. It's a naturally occurring rare sweetener found in figs, dates, and maple syrup. Ultimately, it has 1/10 the calories of cane sugar, which means it won't spike your blood sugar levels. Real Good ice cream comes in a variety of flavors, and starting today, they can be found at realgoodfoods.com and the Vitamin Shop. And guess what? Real Good Foods is giving all Childlike at Best listeners a discount code that'll make us all scream for ice cream. Visit realgoodfoods.com, choose as many of your favorite items, and use promo code BESTIE at checkout. That's BESTIE at checkout to receive 15% off your order. Real Good Foods. Keep it real. From music, when did you think, okay, comedy is now the next thing?
Parallel to discovering punk rock as a very awkward, very uncomfortable fat kid, I had to learn to be funny or die. And so kind of had to, develop a bit of a sense of humor because I was very sensitive, did a lot of crying in my early teens, and found that humor was a real big coping skill for me from a very early age. And the biggest creator of that was The Simpsons. That I have been a Simpsons fan since birth, basically. The show is basically as old as I am. So I just don't know a life without The Simpsons. And am I the kind of person who's every episode, I know every line, all things? No. But what I gained appreciation out of it was a very specific type of humor that I find is very versatile in a way that is profoundly helpful if you have a very specific subset of social and emotional problems.
Yeah.
And so eventually, over time, I learned a little bit more how to kind of wield that, and also learned that funny things are cool, or not cool, but are enjoyable.
Yeah.
And because I was not a big I was never a comedy fan. I never thought of comedy as a genre thing I liked, but I liked comedies. But there were also a lot of comedies that I never thought of as comedies. I maintain I still don't think Ghostbusters is a comedy. I don't think of it as a funny movie. It doesn't make me laugh. It is a document about people doing a very important and necessary job for our society, the busting of ghosts.
Right.
And so it's why I've never understood the great debates of Ghostbusters. It's that comedy is perfect. What the fuck are you talking about? It's 2 movies and 2 cartoon shows and several comic books, and they all create us a whole backlog of how to deal with ghosts.
Right.
Your amusement is irrelevant. I go full Vulcan. So The Simpsons was a big thing, and then also comedy was also the first place I started finding weird stuff and found that liking weird stuff. But so it was like Syphil and Ollie on MTV, Liam Lynch's old show. It was such a profound influence on my brother and I. Are you familiar with this at all?
I'm not, no.
It ran at 1 a.m. on weeknights on MTV, and it was a show that was a radio call-in show hosted by sock puppets.
Wow, okay.
And it was Liam Lynch and another guy, and the show cost maybe $100 an episode. It only aired later. Eventually they would run it earlier and shit like that for a very brief window. But I remember staying up late at a friend's house, and we snuck down and watched an episode after my friend had described it to me, and then was oh well, I have to find out when to watch this at all times. And my brother found it and almost lost his mind with it. And the show would do things they'd get a caller in. Like the joke that sold me on the show forever was just a guy calls and goes, "Hey, my daughter's put a waffle in my VCR and I don't know what to do about it." And they're just like, "Well, have you tried pushing eject?" He's like, "Yeah, just shoot syrup at me." And they're like, "Oh, brutal." Like, "Have you tried like pushing on and off?" And he's like, "Yeah, I tried turning it on and off and then turn it on again. It didn't do anything." They're like, "Well, have you tried pushing play?" And he pushes play and you see him, on the call window thing. And all of a sudden a rainbow of light shoots at him. He goes, "Oh my God, this is the greatest movie, TV show, or program I've ever seen."
That's great.
And in that, I'm just like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever." Like
that's so good. I love that.
And a lot of I liked a lot of like cartoons and again, like kind of shitty cartoons. So it was like, it wasn't even like the humor, I feel like you see a lot of people like, "Oh, I love Looney Tunes." I was like, Looney Tunes was fine, but like Looney Tunes and the USA Problem Child cartoon show had about equal staying power with me.
That's so good.
Like Simpsons is good, but I was also like, but I'm willing to watch an episode of Capital Critters. Bring it to me. Like,
yeah. I'll watch Life with Louie. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I loved. Oh, Life with Louie was a show that had multiple catchphrases absorbed into our household.
Yeah,
that was a big show around here. But didn't watch a lot of stand up or anything like that. And then like in high school, I saw Wet Hot, and that was a big thing.
Yeah.
And then like my second girlfriend in high school, like I dated like 2 girls in high school basically, and like one we bonded over music. She was a drummer, and the other one we bonded over the fact that we both liked David Bowie and Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say that that's not something that I've had more than one relationship be the foundation of. But
sure.
It's the bar's very low. And so kind of finding that and that was kind of in the time period where like Adult Swim was happening, and like that early Adult Swim stuff was a huge thing. Adam Reed is a huge influence on me. That's what's always so weird to me when people ask about comedy is like, "Who were your guys?" I'm like, "Oh, none of them are comedians."
Yeah.
So like the first 25 years of stand-up.
Yeah.
Adam Reed was huge. Aqua Teen as a concept was just like a thing where I'm like, I can't believe this is on TV. Finding Brennan Small through home movies was definitely something. And then like those Family Guy reruns, kind of like, people can hate Family Guy all they want, but like it's a show that's just about a batting average,
right.
and for every shitty joke they have, which there's a lot, they occasionally hit on something where I'm like, "Oh, that's an excellent joke." And it was. And by that time in high school, 2 things happened. One, again, this is way longer an answer than you needed.
No, it's not, Kyle.
All of my friends that kind of coalesced into our little like dirty punk rocker boy group, everybody was funny because everybody was kind of mean. Okay. And so you had to have in the chamber 2 or 3 of the meanest things you can say that are also clever, ready to go at all times, because somebody's going to throw something. You just got to have something ready to shoot back. And then also you're all just kind of dogpiling on riffs and stuff. Like it's whatever is happening at school, whatever's happening in the event, we are running our silly version of it scenario. And again, they were all vile, awful, mean things, often, again, largely directed towards ourselves, sometimes to other people, but like we were just snappy, like, a bunch of sass bags. And that was a big thing. And then also in like 7th or 8th grade, I started like writing stuff. And when I first started writing, and I always had like a distinct memory of like a history teacher I had who I thought was cool, who looking back did not like me. Said something about like, "Oh, you're probably like writing some superhero stories." And I was like, "Yeah, I was." And thought that I thought I had been seen. Instead, I realized she was actually like taking a dig at me.
Oh my god,
that's always a weird feeling later on when you're like, "Oh, that person was not my friend."
Yeah.
And originally it was all kind of like earnest. Like I was obsessed with like superheroes who fight vampires because Blade was a movie.
Yeah.
And then it kind of evolved into finding like Kevin Smith was a big thing because all of a sudden it was like, oh, he talks about Star Wars, but also like, dicks. And I was like, that's a fun combination. And that was a big influence on everybody. But then it kind of evolved from there. And it was less like, oh, I want to be Kevin Smith Nuge. And it was more like, oh, well, that fat, awkward guy was able to write shit and got successful. So there's precedent now. So now I should try that. And was writing and kind of got less earnest, heroic stuff, which was probably, I think you turn 13 and you can't quite have the same level of like, this is a great thing. Like, and that all kind of goes away. And then kind of finding that like, funny subversive slice of life things, learning like seeing like stuff like Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Dazed and Confused, and a lot of like, and getting into indie film was a real big thing for me. I think for a lot of people they started on Kevin Smith and then that was just the end of indie film for them. Like they were just like and he's it, and I was just like, tell me more about these people, like who are these Jarmusch and Spike Lee gentlemen,
right.
And that opened up a whole different kind of humor, because I think for a long time I was like comedy. That's like you wear a fake nose and mustache and go yakety schmackety or whatever. And I was like, that's profoundly lame. Realizing all these other versions of comedy existed could be kind of weird and subversive, because so much of it was just like, well, if it makes if it's down the line, everybody likes it, why would I enjoy it? Like, that those people don't enjoy me, so why would I make content for them? And then it became like, finding punk and finding DIY and finding indie cinema and stuff like that. All of a sudden it was like, oh, I can say what I want and put it out there. And if somebody else identifies with it, it comes back.
Absolutely.
It's a different kind of game because it's not instant gratification. It's I say this and everybody tells me I'm great. It's like, no, you throw it out there and then a couple months later, you get a email or something from somebody who's like, I like your band, or like, oh, I read that thing on fanfiction.net and it was pretty good. Like, shit like that. And a friend of mine and I would write these like we call them movies, but just so that we were writing, they're all just handwritten. He started it one day and then showed it to me, and then we had a class together in sixth period every day, and he showed me. I was like, oh, that's kind of dope. Can I like take this and fuck with it tomorrow? I don't know why I asked. Like, it's his thing. And then he was like, okay. And so I wrote 2 more pages of it, and then the next day in sixth period, handed it back to him, and he took it the next day. And eventually we had a whole system, and we wrote like a whole movie. I am so bummed because I'm sure that it exists somewhere in a box in storage in a manila folder, and probably all the pages aren't there. But we wrote like a full Quentin Tarantino crime comedy as 2 like 15-year-old boys, handwritten back and forth in a big fucking file, to like give back and forth about like a guy who is sad and just got broken up with, and then his brother is wanted by the mob, so them and this like hooker lady end up all like teaming up as a threesome, like a trio to like get away from the mob. And it's got all these twists and turns and like action scenes and shit like that.
That's awesome.
And then like our big finish was like the brother, because we're like, he's got to pay, something's got to happen because he did fuck up, and like he can't just like get away with it. So when like a mobster crushes one of his balls with a hammer, and like I remember having a distinct memory of like, it was like 4th period, and my friend walked over to me, and because we had talked about, that was it, we had a class at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So the middle of the day was writing time. The beginning was planning out what we're going to do today, and then review all our work on at 6th period. And I was clearly a committed student, but and he brought it to me like 2nd period. He passed by me and he handed me the folder, and it was like, fine, you fucking do it. Because I proposed that as one of the many ways. They're like, oh, we can cut off his hand. We're like, oh, that's kind of like Reservoir Dogs or like something like you don't want to like rip off like a Tarantino thing. We want to do something original. And that was what we kind of landed to. And he got to writing the line in the scene description, the stage action. And he handed me the folder and goes, all right, if you think it's such a good idea, you get to write it. And handed it to me. So I had to go write the mobster returns in, and before whatever's able to adjust, like he smashes his testicle.
I love it.
The time I got to college, I was the first time I was like, oh, I guess I'm like a funny guy, and that there's not other funny people here. Because he was like, oh, you're funny. And I was like, what? Don't you mean handsome or fun or cool? And they're like, nope, funny. I know what I said. So I was almost kind of like mad at it. Like he's funny was sort of the way of saying like, oh, he's funny, gross, but humorous. Or, whatever.
I know that feeling as well.
Yeah. We all end up comedians. And so by my senior year, junior year, I was almost like ready to graduate early. So I ended up taking on a minor in film just to like keep this college thing going for a while. So started taking film classes, and one of the classes I just happened to take was a class called comedy writing. And I was like, sure, I enjoy comedy and writing. Had never really thought of them as a combo. And the final was you went and did 5 minutes of stand-up at the Ice House at the end of the semester, which is a club here in LA, like a real old comedy club. And then I got invited back. And I had no idea what I was doing. I like didn't know how stand-up worked. I knew like Dave Chappelle, and I knew like Dave Attell, and I knew like
all
a very specific subset of comedians. Yeah, like my big performance influences were things like Henry Rollins' spoken word was a huge thing for me. Or like John Leguizamo's Freak. Like shit like that was like the kind of version of comedy, or like Dennis Leary's No Cure for Cancer was like a thing I thought was real cool. Like, so I did not have hip comedy. Like the first time I heard Patton Oswalt was in that class.
Really?
I was like, who the fuck's this guy? Fuck him.
Oh my gosh.
And then eventually like then I did it, but I was still playing music at the time. So I was like, whatever, comedy's all well and great, but I'm gonna rock forever. And forever was another 7 weeks. And then the band fell apart, and I kept getting invited back to the club to do more stand-up-y stuff because I was this kind of like young unknown that they kind of liked the cut of his jib. And I did a lot of stuff without taking any of it seriously, and then kind of fell off of it a little bit. And then had 2 or 3 like weird, shitty things happen in rapid succession, and was just like, oh, I think maybe I'll just go do this other thing then. And really, like when I was about, I don't know, 23, because first time I'd done stand-up was at 21. And then by like 23, after doing it kind of off and on for 2 years, was like, okay, like I guess now we're going to throw down and I'm going to do this like willingly. And then not only had to like, I had so much beginner's luck because I just wasn't thinking about it. How it's almost that like, you play better when you're not thinking than when you're really trying.
Right.
And then it flipped into like, well, now I'm really trying, so now I'm terrible at this. But I'm not like terrible. And I did get lucky because I did not know how open mics work. I knew how open mics worked for music and for poetry because I was a failed musician who had wanted to be a poet in college. So I'd done both of those things. And I'd seen comedians at those sometimes, and they were always shitty. Mm-hmm. So I was like, if I'm half as shitty as those guys, I'll still be fine. They got laughs, and they were the worst thing I've ever seen. And I found a mic in my town and was like, hey, I'm a comedian. Can I do jokes at your mic? And the guy was like, you're our only one, but sure, it changes pace up. And he's like, all right, comedians, musicians get 3 songs, so I guess I'll give you 12 minutes, which looking back now, I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah, it is.
So for a year, once I started taking it seriously, I had a once-a-week spot in front of a civilian music crowd where I could do 12 new minutes every week. So I got to be really shitty fast. I got to like burn years worth of shittiness in a very like compressed time. And after a year of doing that, and then I was in grad school at that time too. So I was waking up at 5 a.m, teaching in South Central Los Angeles, going to USC for grad school, and then coming home Tuesday nights doing that open mic. And I was doing that Monday to Friday. And then Saturday I would do and Sunday I would do all my paper writing for grad school, but I would get done about 4:00 on Saturdays. And then I would shower after writing papers all day. And I would drive to Hollywood, and there was like 3 mics on Sunset Boulevard across from where Meltdown was, but wasn't a theater yet.
Right.
And you could do those 3 mics over the course of like, basically from like 7 to it was when the first one started, and you could hit that and then go down and hit this other one. And then there was a mic that started at 12:30 at night and went to 4:30 in the morning. And that wasn't even a mic. It was like a show, but if you hung out, you could usually get a spot. Host would like hook up spots occasionally, or like, if the host didn't know me, like, or if somebody who I did know me was hosting, he'd throw me up. And that's where I met a lot of comedians I would go on to like see other places. That's where I met Ed Greer. That's where I met Jamar Neighbors. That's where I met like Paul Palmieri, who's like out of the game, but I always think it was my comedy big brother because he's the guy who taught me how to do open mics.
Yeah.
Nick Petrillo, Christine Medrano, all these people who like have gone on to do a lot of cool stuff. And I always kind of think of them as like, those were the cool kids when I was a baby.
Right.
But basically I'd be out from like 7 to 4:30 in the morning from Saturday night through Sunday, and then sleep till noon, finish my papers, then repeat the process again. And that was a year of my 13 months of my life was just doing that every week. And then literally I finished grad school, and the weekend before, like, and I finished grad school, and there was a week before you graduated for grad school, and the Nerd Melt Theater just opened then. And I was terrified of going because I had been around most like club and road doggy kind of comedians, had not really experienced the alt scene at all, and had always been kind of told, oh, they're mean.
Yeah.
So I was terrified. And so then I went and had like a full tilt panic attack before the first time I went to the Matt Myers Day Off open mic, because I was like, everyone's going to be mean. And I've been working so hard on this for so many years, they're going to be dicks about it. And then went and actually did really well. Went back the next week and got up and also did all right. Not as good as the first time, but and that first one was crazy because like half the show got bumped because like Hardwick showed up and did 20 minutes in the middle of the thing, because before anybody understood how the theater was going to work, there was no laws, there was no staff, everyone was just making shit up as they went along. But so originally half the list was going to get bumped, but then a bunch of people bailed, and me and a couple, and it's weird because again I look at it, it was like the people who ended up going up were like me, Ahmed Barucha, Ryan O'Flanagan, Paige Weldon, like all these people who would go on to be all these amazing comedians, like had gone up. And so that was like this kind of, and after the second time I went up, I remember talking to whoever was in charge in the theater at the time. I was like, hey, do you guys need like people's cars washed or anything? Like, do you guys need help here? And they're like, oh, we're kind of looking for interns still for the theater. Like, well, I'll put you in. And they put me in touch with Emily Gordon. And I had to miss, I forget what event it was, but like that's what it was. I had missed the first open Matt Myers Day Off because I was busy graduating from USC for my master's degree. And I was kind of pissy about it because I wanted to do open mics more than I wanted to get my degree from grad school.
Right.
And I remember like very distinctly like being all bummer about it. Like, cause thing. And like my girlfriend, who's also in this grad school program, was like, could you be excited for a second? I was fine. And then my parents were like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to go to Bubba Gump's City Walk. That'll cheer me up.
That's such a Kyle Clark thing to want to do after graduation.
And then started working at Meltdown, and then it was just kind of a crazy run from there. But yeah, this like comedy was just an elaborate series of good or bad timing, you know, and weird shit that doesn't exist anymore. Like I feel weird sometimes when it's like hard for me to give advice. I'm like, the key is you just got to be in the exact right time for several things that are totally separate from each other.
Right. It's kind of insane, man. I mean, as far as myself, like I want to say I didn't start stand-up until maybe 2 weeks after I met you. So like,
really?
Yeah. So like
met.
Yeah, like when we met in Los Angeles.
Now when I saw your shocked face on Twitter after the shout out for your band.
Right. Yes.
Okay. We're like a couple that have 2 anniversaries.
Yes, we do. Which I mean, to this day, I still talk about how like it really is almost exactly what you're talking about, where it's just like right place, right time kind of thing. Because like I loved Meltdown like nobody's business, and I was there all the time. And you were the head of the open mic at that time, you know. So I want to say I went on maybe once or twice, and because of that, I got in with like, you know, Matt Bennett and that whole crowd. And then Matt out of nowhere was like, "Hey man, somebody dropped this show as your show. You want to be on that show?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." So like it was just like a series of events, really. Like I got a lot of things before I should have. You know what I mean?
God bless Matt Bennett. I love that man.
I love that dude like nobody's business. I still tell everybody, like, if it weren't for Kyle Clark and for Matt Bennett, I would have had literally nothing in Los Angeles. Like,
he's one of those guys who I often have to be careful if I see him, because, and I think he's said this just like, we'll get sucked into music bullshit conversations that are, because he's such a music guy and such a like nerd for details and stuff, in a way that like, I know a lot of people who love stuff, but occasionally you meet somebody who is like a kindred spirit as far as like really going deep on stuff. And it's kind of fun when I talk to Matt, because he is another like music guy who's like, it's not just that like, oh yeah, the music's great, or I really like that lyric. It's like, yeah, no, and I think all the time about how in like 1985 they did that weird EP session, and I wonder like sometimes like what had happened if they'd originally had like this person show up to produce it instead of having to like go over to this thing. But if they don't do that, then Touch and Go never hears those demos. Like those kind of levels of like where you're just like, oh man, I swear to God, I understand the touch of another human being.
Yes, that dude's awesome. So here's another thing I wanted to ask you. You've been doing comedy for so long, you definitely have had hell gigs.
Oh yeah.
So let's
11 years in, it's been good the whole time. It's crazy.
Let's talk about hell gigs for a minute.
I mean, I like hell gigs to a certain extent.
Sure.
Like I feel like I actively seek out challenges. Like once I kind of went from like, okay, like I love stand up and this is who I am now. Like once I kind of hit that couple of years of experience under my belt where you just want to do it all and you're obsessed with it and all that kind of stuff, when I started trying to kind of refine from like, okay, like I'm okay now, like what can I do to grow? Because I kind of hit like a plateau a little bit.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked around and I looked at like who were the comedians, not the famous ones, but like who are like the comedians around that I like and think are interesting, and like why do I like what they do, and like why do I think it's interesting? And it was a fun exercise to do. And I kind of came up with like a very specific set of comedians that I found that I like, because it wasn't just that I think they're funny, because there's like a million comedians I think are funny, but like when you're looking for somebody where it's like, I want to do something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
And I think like, especially then, because so many people were it was the height of like hacky alt comedians, where it's just like, hey, this unicorn told me that this one TV show or rap lyric is like kind of weird if you think about it. Like there was a lot of that going on. I was like, oh, I hate this with all of my heart.
Right.
And I was like, well, who do I like what they do? And like the three of the comedians that I really looked at who were like peers, but that I also like admired a lot. And they were Jesse Case, Ed Greer, and Wendy Starling. And again, none of the three of them are like famous comedians. I still maintain I think they're the three of the greatest comedians I've ever seen. Wendy is always kind of my default answer for favorite comedian, and Ed could be the exact same way, or Jesse. Famous comedians are okay, but like you should probably go watch Ed Greer.
Ed's great, actually. I love Ed.
Edgar has my favorite moment in the history of comedy. Me watching a performer on stage is like, and it actually ties into all this. But basically, I found that all three of them went to this very specific bar. It's actually in I Am Comic called the Liquid Zoo.
Okay.
And the Liquid Zoo is run by, on Wednesday nights. Is run by a guy named Ron Swallow. And Ron Swallow is one of my favorite human beings. He's on Radland Records. He's going to do a double album at some point here, and it's going to be the fact that like first double album I'll ever get to release is a Ron Swallow double album, debut double album. Makes me so happy because he is truly one of my favorite people on earth. But
That's great.
And that mic went from like 7 p.m. to last call. And I had gone years ago and had realized that I got there at 7, but people had already signed up early. And so I didn't go on until like 10 p.m. And I was like, what a colossal waste of time. Fuck all of this.
Right.
And then somebody was like, oh, well, you message him and you can like if you get a later spot, like just message him and you can show up later because he'll have that way he gets the early people up early. And then as the late people show up, it's kind of a system. And so I was so nervous to do it because like he doesn't know me. Like, why would he do me any solids? And I was like, hey, could I get a spot around midnight, maybe? And he was like, yeah, all right. And I showed up and I found that like around midnight, a lot of like really good road dog comics would show up to this mic. Augie Smith would show up. I definitely saw Jackie Cation there, at least once. A lot of just real like that kind of like those people who were just like comedy ass comedian. And it was fun to like see all these people, like, some people who have TV credits, people who can headline and they're workshopping stuff here. And that mic gave you 7 minutes, which is an eternity in LA open mics because most of them in LMX are 3 to 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So like 7 is like almost a full set you can practice. So I did it and I ate shit. Even late, but like it was a different kind of eat shit like than many other mics where like I ate shit because I did a bad job, not because I was nervous, because I was scared of the crowd, because I was worried, because there's like pimps at this bar and there are possible people who are dangerous, and like it is not a comedy bar. It is a bar of transients that comedians have been allowed to hang out in because they're like amused by the comedy, and sometimes they're amused by it because they terrify comedians on stage. And so it is maybe one of the most inhospitable rooms to be a timid comedian in, or a comedian who does not have a good sense of who they are or what they're doing on stage. Right. If you're somebody who's like, what else do I want to talk about? Or checking your notes like, oh, like I saw this on TV, like you're just going to get booed and not listened to. And like, or somebody's going to be like, what? Like,
exactly,
and the buzz you got off, it was like a little different. It was not, oh, I did shitty. It was like, fuck them. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this. And for the next 3 years, I would go every Wednesday night after midnight to this bar in a not great part of the valley and get up there and work on stuff. And not only work on stuff, but get to watch Ed and Jesse and Wendy and Augie and all these amazing people do their act. And not only do their act, but fucking slay. Yeah. Slay at late at night, full of a bunch of insane people, and not only slay, but slay not doing easy, gross, or hacky things, which would play, but like would be bringing artistry to it on top of bringing that. And like watching Ed do bits about Red Dead Redemption in a room full of people who like, if he had walked him and said, I like video games, like an alt comedian would have been murdered. Right. Instead, like Ed is getting to make like deep cut fucking X-Men jokes in a room full of like crazy people, and they're playing because he's figured out how to present that information in a way that makes these maniacs understand emotionally what he's saying. That's where I learned to be funny, and that's where I learned to like, get into and then from there like started taking weird gigs on the road, especially like stuff with like Keith Carey and shit like that, where it's like, oh, there's a stabby bar in the middle of the Central Valley. Yeah, we'll be there. And along those times, like also like going out to Orange County and making friends with those people. But like this weird combination of Orange County and that fucking bar, and a couple other locations are like the way that I got it. And then when Mendy moved to New York, I kind of inherited the like last call spot, like 1:45 at night. Like, and you're going to walk up there. You're going to be the last comedian of the thing. The bar is not empty because it's still like a crazy, gnarly bar. And there's still comedians there kind of watching good comedians do sets because it was an interesting thing to watch. And like a year of every week, taking that spot and just like going up in the most inhospitable environment and learning how to be good in that really prepared me for bad rooms. And like to this day, I still love like a tough room. That's all to say this. I did find a nemesis once though. And I do have like a firm answer for the worst show I've ever done.
Please
the irony,
tell
it was a booked show Ron Swallow put me on. And so it's always funny because like it's looking at every part of the gig. I still don't know what, like I could not have done anything differently that night besides just like I just walked into my own death in a dimension where like there is no alternate sliding doors version. Like I just fail at this 1,000 times over.
Yeah.
It was at the short-lived John Lovett's Comedy Club at Universal City Walk in Los Angeles. So already I'm always heartbroken because it's one of my favorite, like City Walk is one of my favorite places on earth. Like I genuinely and non-ironically love it. Some ironic, but like 90% non-ironic love it.
Right.
And I love walking around there. I was excited to be there. So I'm doing a gig at my favorite place in the world. This is going to be awesome. And it's me and it's Ron hosting. And then it's Joe Starr, who did a lot of writing for a lot of like nerd comedy stuff. And Connor McSpadden, the beloved boy king of comedy. And then the headliner was a woman whose name I forget, but she was one of Ralphie May's openers and she was insane. She was so good. We walk on for this show. I am going to be the first comedian on. No, that's right. Ron wasn't hosting. I was hosting. That's what it was.
Okay.
Ron brought me up and then Ron was on and then Joe and then Connor and then Joe, Ron, and this lady. I hate that I forget her name because she was so fun. But like I walk out and it is Christmas time and it's not particularly full. That venue was insane. It was 3 floors high. It was supposed to be, it used to be a B.B. King's Blues Club that then evolved into a comedy venue.
Yeah.
It was mostly doing like Adam Carolla and Kevin Smith podcast. And the green room is basically the 3rd floor where you could look over on a balcony and watch a show. And the audience is basically on the 1st floor. And then the 2nd floor was like podcasting shit. I go out. The only people there is basically it has been pseudo booked out for a firefighters holiday party.
Oh, gosh.
I walk out. So it's a bunch of firefighters and their wives. And I have the week before this gig done my second time doing Meltdown with Joan and Kameo. And it was up to that point, and for many years afterwards, like the best set I ever had doing anything, anywhere, ever. Like it's the most happy I had been with anything in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. At least I know the material is going to work. I was running a weekly show during that time, so I was kind of like a stand-up machine. I was pretty confident things were going to go well. And I'm excited because like Joe Starr's a real sweet guy. Ron's one of my favorite people. And Connor, I met when he was 17 at an open mic in Orange County, like when he was first starting. And so in my mind, he's still like that funny, you know, that little high school kid's going to get his shit together.
Right.
And unbeknownst to me, in the time since I've last seen Connor, he has morphed into one of the funniest human beings who will ever live.
Yeah.
And I'm not fully aware of how true this is. I already knew he was funny. I did not know that he knew how funny he was at that point. And I learned very quickly because I went on stage and I bombed my face off.
Yeah.
I bombed. Like I look back and just go like, God, statistically something should have gone right by accident. And it went from like, oh, this is going bad to like, oh, now they willfully hate me. So like I'm digging even apart. And I tried to like crowd work them back and make fun of myself. And like when I did a self-depreciating joke, they didn't laugh. They just thought like, well, at least he knows he's shitty.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
Just it was like I have that is probably one of the most like where are my legs? Oh, there goes gravity kind of moments I've ever had. Like it was crazy.
Oh,
and
my
then
gosh.
I'm hosting, which means every time a comedian comes on, I have to come back out and continue having them hate me. And I very distinctly remember, must have been Joe went first, and even like I brought him up, and he kind of shook my hand. He was like, I was like, they're tough, and he was like, and then Joe did fine, great set. And then I'm standing upstairs, and Connor turns to me and goes, hey, are you going to do more stories before you bring me up? Because I've got credits I'd like you to give.
Oh,
and it's funny because for years, Connor referred to my act as stories. Like they're not jokes, they're stories. Because jokes have punchlines and I have stories. And I was like, fuck, I hate how right he is because it's so mean, but it's also like completely correct. But I remember after every comedian, they'd do well, and I'd come back on trying to like coast on the goodwill. Like you've hosted before. You know how like when somebody has a great set, when you're a host, you just fly in and catch some of those like crumbs. Like
yes.
And I would do that, and literally they would shut down. Like they were willfully just like, not for you. These laughs are not for you. Do not confuse and think we like you for a second. And yeah, just proceeded to, and literally like after the show, I was like having a spiral. For the record, I went back that same night and drowned my sorrows in more Bubba Gump and City Walk.
Yeah, that sounds
it plays
about right.
A lot of life stories for me.
Sounds about right.
But and it was funny because our host, our like waiter at the thing was another comedian who this guy Mikey McKernan who used to run a great show called Turbo Tuesdays, who I knew really well. And he was like, "Oh, you just did the thing. How was it?" I'm like, "Maybe the worst set I've ever had." He's like, "That can't be." I'm like, "Sit down for a minute. Let me tell you how." And by then he was like, "Oh, that was bad. Like that sounds awful."
Man.
And like Ron was even like after the show, he's like, "Hey man, like I love you, man. I don't judge it. I've never seen anything quite like what just happened there." So yeah, so that it's funny to me. I've done so many gigs in the middle of nowhere. I've done. I did a show with Keith in the middle of the Central Valley where people were actively methed out, having sex in the room while we were trying to do stand-up.
Wow.
And I still don't think of it as bad as that fucking John Lovett's Comedy Club show. Because you know what? I got a laugh or two. I actually did okay when the crowd were having sex. Like, it was just, by that point, it's just color to the room. Like,
right.
I've never experienced anything like that. It was bananas.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think I have something similar to that. When you were telling that story, it reminded me of a time when I hosted at the Improv, and it was very similar, where like the headliner was a Lebanese comedian. His name's Nimmer, and he's extremely huge, and so he like filled out this room, and so I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be a sold out show, this kind of stuff. So I went out and I did my material as a host, and you know me, I'm a very happy-go-lucky kind of a person, and these people were just like, "Why are you smiling? We don't like you," like that kind of thing. And it was just like, oh man, yeah, a lot of those same vibes were like, the comedian after me destroyed as well. And then I would try to get some of those laughs, and it was like, no, this isn't for you, dude.
Yeah,
like
it's interesting. Like sometimes crowds are just like, we hate you.
Yeah,
like,
it was so weird, man. Like there was a point in the mic in my set where I was telling a joke, and in my head I was saying, why am I hearing someone order chicken fingers over my own stand-up right now? like literally everyone was so loud ordering chicken fingers or like doing their own thing. It was just a complete weird type of thing. But that's the thing, honestly, man, like the good silver lining in comedy, and one of the reasons why I love it is because it is something that will always keep you humble. That is just,
oh yeah,
like comedy will just always do that for you.
Some of the most profoundly inspiring things in comedy that kept me going when things get dark is when I watch like one of my heroes just like shit the bed for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I won't name names because that seems like a shitty thing to do, but like I've really watched a couple of people who in my mind are like the greatest comedians who have ever lived, or like in that conversation. Absolutely. Just like fucking fail. Like, and not even like like that one didn't land, but they got it like from bottom to top. At no point did the set pick up. Like it did no point did they steer. Like the plane lost altitude and crashed and everyone died. And it was a real I was like, all right, well, if they had that set, then I don't have to be near as upset about like when I have bad sets, because I'm nowhere near as talented as them. They can't save the plane. Like there's no reason for me to think that sometimes that I have to, not even that I have to, but that I'm able to save them. It's I've been watching entirely too much Star Trek, so everything is through a Star Trek filter for me right now, but it's really that like no fear, or like understanding fear, Kobayashi Maru, like you can't win every time kind of thing. Absolutely. That I find so interesting because it's such a thing to learn in stand-up. And you meet those like either young or shitty like comedians who are like, I never bomb. And it's like, okay, then you just don't know that when you're bombing. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That is untrue.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem with like art being subjective is like, if everybody fully agrees on something, it's probably not wildly interesting. And I'm not saying like we're both too hot for TV sometimes. It's like, I don't think my act's like that wild or crazy. I mean, it's what it is, but sometimes people are just don't want what you're selling. Exactly.
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense. In fact,
do you ever have faces in your head of like a person you've seen who like you are starting a bit, or you're like, the worst when you're midway through a bit and you catch somebody's face who's just having a terrible time?
Yes.
Did a show in Atlanta at a rooftop wine bar, a late night rooftop wine bar. And it was mostly like comedians who should have been on that show. And I got like thrown on because they're like, hey, we got some open spots. And I'm like, I'll literally go anywhere you say anytime.
Right.
And went and did the show. And like, sometimes you like decide, make a decision, and then after the fact, you're like, that was the bad decision. I should have picked the other decision. Because I was like, I had been leaning into different bits, and there was a bit I was working on that I hadn't done a ton at this, like that run of shows. So I was like, oh, I'm going to pull out, because it's the bit on my last album about people in my family losing fingers.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of members of my family who are missing fingers, and I have like a kind of 10-minute chunk on it. And this is this 10-minute set, and I was like, I've been leaning into the other stuff. I think I'm going to do the fingers thing. And so I went into this very nice downtown rooftop wine bar in Atlanta, downtown Atlanta, with a bunch of very well-dressed, wine-sipping, nice people, and went and talked about my family and their missing appendages. And I will always just have the vision of this woman with a big glass of white wine staring at me with like just abject horror, just not enjoying it, but mostly just like, someone silence this awful man.
Oh my gosh.
And like the set was okay. Like people had a good time on the whole. But I will always have, like, in my head, a very specific memory of, like, this one particular woman who was, like, because everybody else is doing bits that, like, match the venue and the kind of crowd and shit like that. And I was like, whatever, man, I'm going to go against the grain. And that was a terrible call. Like,
Man, that's happened
do you have
to
a
me
bit
as well,
that you, like, are like, I shouldn't do this here?
Yeah, absolutely. Almost every time I do my Full House bit anywhere in Miami, because none of these people watch Full House. And I'm like, I don't care.
It is funny that you're a Miami comedian at this point. And again, I have this weird theory that like Florida secretly has the best comedians come out of it. Cause like, Lisa Best, Wendy Starling, like there's so many like really, Paul Lair, like all these people who come out of there who are so fucking funny.
Yeah.
But it is just so funny because I'm just like, I can't think of somebody who like should not be like in a white suit. Like in my mind, all of Miami is just Will Smith's Miami music video from 1998.
Yes.
So I just imagine you in like a lot of white suits on speedboats is how you get to venues. Because I imagine it's the busing system there.
It's almost exactly how it is here. So I mean, man,
There's a little chihuahua and a sash.
Yeah, it's a good theory to have. I think I have that theory as well, that a lot of usually end up being a little stronger. Because
you're coming into such a hostile territory.
Exactly.
Every gig is a hell gig until proven otherwise.
Exactly. It is literally not a good gig until you make it one. Like, that's it.
In Florida is so fucking bad. It's weird the places I want to go at this point. It's
right.
like Philadelphia and like Florida.
I mean, if you come here, I would love to see you, dude. You have a place to stay. You can come whenever you want.
I'll make it out there. I mean, the people of Philadelphia are maybe the only city that has like asked me to come, and I still haven't made it out there. So I feel like I still got to get there first.
Oh, yeah.
Like, their priority. But like Florida is like, it'll end up being a hat trick where I'll have to figure out how to like do horror nights on like a Thursday and then book like a Friday, Saturday, and then fly back Sunday, and just then no one's the wiser.
Right. So here's another thing, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to talk about like the best of the best sets. Like, give me some good times where you've been on stage.
I don't know that I keep track of those quite the same way.
Really?
I mean, I have like, I'm trying to think like the best way to say this. I'm not a real like I gotta win guy.
Yeah.
Because I lost at everything as a kid. I was bad at everything as a kid. I was on a basketball team once that won 0 games in a season. And It's funny, like, I love it because, like, my greatest moment of athletic prowess was I scored 20 points in a youth basketball game in one game once, and was, like, top scorer, and we still lost the game, and it was the season where we never won a game. So it was a real, like, I had a real, like, set of, like, vision for, like, so I'm not, like, competitive in the, like, I gotta win or this has got to be the best kind of way. I'm a lot more of a, like, did I get what I went into that set trying to accomplish done?
Yeah.
And so a lot of sets, it's like I walk up and it's like, did I do the jokes the way I wanted to do them? Did they get the reaction? Did I tell them the best that I could tell them and stuff like that? And that kind of refine. It's part of why I like stand-up is that it's a very like, there's no score.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I have, like all 3 album tapings I'm very proud of. I think all 3 album taping shows I've done, because I've done one and dones for all 3 albums, because like, if you're going to gamble with something that your livelihood depends on lightly.
Right.
So I think like, especially like Pizza Night was very scary, but like the stakes were low enough that it didn't matter to anybody really but me. And really, like, I had a lot of people who I think were also interested in the idea of making a record. So the fact that somebody they knew was doing it without any help.
Did you record Pizza Night at Meltdown?
No, I recorded Pizza Night at a place called Dangerfield Threes. That was a comedian had turned part of their house into a comedy venue. And the Pizza Night record is actually the rehearsal show.
Is it?
Then I did the actual show at a place called The Dial that was like a DIY punk venue, and no one came.
Wow.
So I was so lucky that we had taped the rehearsal, but it also kind of was why I was like the one and done. Like, I was like, oh, I set this up for 2 and 1 was a waste of time. So why don't I just get it right the first time? And by the second round, the second one, there was a series of shows at Meltdown called An Evening With, and they would do, an evening with a comedian where they would do a long set and they would book a couple of their people they liked as openers. So like they had done like an evening with Ron Funches or like an evening with Best Stelling and shit like that. And the people who produced it were like, hey, would you want to do one of these? And I was like, I'd be honored. And then I kind of called him. I was like, hey, I was thinking of recording an album. Melt, do you want to just like make it a double and make it an evening with Kyle Clark and make it also an album taping for this record? And I like thought out the house so that it could be free, so that it was easy to pack out. And you weren't there, were you?
I was there, yeah.
You weren't I'm in person. Okay. God, that record feels like 1,000 years ago now. So I've lost the last 5 years. I'll just feel like a weird jumbled mess of time. So, and that album kind of happened because like I had, lost a manager and all the kind of like early stuff I was doing to try to like take a career a certain way had kind of fallen off. And I was kind of just like out of things to do. And I was like, I think I got to do this one because I did the last one was like to learn. And this one is like a for real.
Yeah.
And so did it. And like, I got complicated feelings about that night for a lot of reasons, but overall I was very happy with how it went, but I also felt really weird about it. And so like, that's why that record took so long to come out. Like I recorded it in December of 2015. It came out on Halloween 2016. And so, yeah, I had to kind of work through a lot with it. So, it was like a kind of a weird bittersweet thing. And then, this last one I was really proud of. But again, it was like this last one was so much more of like a catharsis because now it's like, okay, we're traveling for it. My family's in tow. It's going to be part of this label I'm starting. Like there was all these like things to it that weren't just like do a good job. Like I was like, by that point, I'd been doing enough stand up to feel pretty good about it. It was a little scary going in just because there was a lot of drama in my life and stuff like that. But ultimately it came down to like, okay, we'll just see what happened. As far as like things I look back, like the first Meltdown set is like one of a very limited run of sets that I really think about with any kind of concrete clarity as being like a good thing. And it wasn't even like, oh, it was great. Like I did well, like, it was, but I had never wanted anything more than I wanted to do that set. And so like for the month before it literally just like, it was just total war, full effort. Like everything I was doing was in some way, shape or form helping me make that set a better set. Every time I went to work, I'm running the set in my head. I'm running the things, I'm writing shit down. I'm going to mics and doing everything I can. Cause it's like, this is all that matters. Yeah. And then did it. And then it was like this weird thing of like, I was so happy, but then it's also funny because that show's on a Wednesday. So Thursday I'm back up and I'm back to work the next day. And, it's like nobody is signing you to a deal. Nobody is going like, well, now you're part of our team and we have secret breakfast where you get to, hang out with all the cool kids. It's just like, oh, and it was even funny because I was like, I tried to explain to him like, no guys, it was really neat. Like I did a show last night. I'm like, oh, cool. You did another show. I'm like, no, this was like a different one. Like guys, I got to meet Dana Gould and Brian Posehn last night and they don't know who those people are.
Right.
And I remember like that was the biggest, scariest part of it was like walking, doing the show and like Dana Gould does a drop in, which to everybody else is like, cool, funny man, tells jokes. We're here for it. And for me, I'm like, fuck me. Like one of the 3 or 4 like comedians who I really respect and admire and want to like kind of model some of my career at the time after is like all of a sudden there. I'm like, fuck, comedy uncle can't show up unannounced. Like this is weird now.
Yeah, man.
And the fact that like he saw it and was like, oh, you're funny. Like, good job. And I was just like, oh, cool. Like, cool. I'm not going to puke now.
Yeah. I mean, that happened to me at Meltdown, man. I mean, not to make you feel weird or anything, but like, I remember doing a set and you pulling me aside and being like, hey man, I'm really proud of you. And that was a huge moment for me. Aww. You know what I mean? Like, it was a really huge moment for me because like, I really enjoy you just as a person, as a comedian. And those kind of things would happen all the time, man. I remember I went to one of Matt's shows and like Pete Holmes would drop in, and like Dana Gould or Jackie Cation or any of these people. I mean, name anyone and they would drop in, and it was one of the reasons why Meltdown was my favorite place. Because
it's also funny how sometimes people like that become lucky charms for you. Is there any like comedian who, whether they know it or not, is like a lucky charm for you? Like that they're on a show or if they're at a thing, you're just like, okay, I'm gonna stick around for a minute because good things happen when this person's here.
As far as like when they perform, it's gonna be a good show?
No, more like when you're on a show with them or if you're at a thing and you see them there. Like here, I'll explain. Like Steve Agee has been a good luck charm for me in the past. Okay. I've had very important events in my life that like went well, and Steve Agee was at them, and so I just associate him with like as like he's my version of like the waving China cat.
Yeah.
And like Baron Von's a similar one where like I've never had a bad show experience if like Baron Von is attached to the show. He's like in my mind, he's like a real sign of like quality assurance.
You were my good luck charm when I was in LA.
Aww.
You know, and I've already said it where it's just like if it weren't for you or Matt Bennett, like I would have had nothing or no one. I actually considered you and Matt like very, very close friends, whether you realized it or not. You know, it was just like one of those things where like these are the people that I care about, and these, you know, I care about if they think I'm funny and like, you know, all
you're
these
a guy
kinds
I root for.
Well, thanks, man.
You're a weirdo with a lust for life. I'm invested in the success of this.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. So that's probably the closest when it comes to Los Angeles, but here, I'm not sure. I think my good luck charm here would probably be Luis Diaz, which he's an amazing comedian from down here. He has a show at the Improv that he always lets me perform on, even though I shouldn't be on it every single time, but he lets me be on it. Even, I mean, and you know this, where like, even if a show isn't fully packed out, as long as 100% of the audience completely cares about what you're saying,
I prefer that.
It's a great show. And that's literally all of Lewis's shows are like that for me. So
a good crowd is better than a full crowd to me, except, you know, when it comes time to pay for gas.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So I'm just going to ask you one last thing here, just because I've been talking to a lot of people during this whole quarantine thing. So the question I want to ask you is, where is the first place you're going to go once this whole thing is over?
God, it's funny because like I think I've been thinking like, we just got the kind of extension. It looks like my 4th of July party's not going to go this year because of quarantine stuff, and that was like, it's funny because like that's, you know, I've been on a real good run of like feeling pretty confident. Like I really was intense about like keeping myself structured, you know, and I'm showering and I'm shaving and I'm cleaning and I'm working and I'm doing stuff and having fun too. I mean, I beat Resident Evil 3. It's great. And stuff like that. But like, that was the first real like thing that like pulled the wind out of my sails in a while. And I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking people off the ledge, and now I'm just like, oh, fuck that ledge. We're gone. Everything's over. It's all done. And did not realize how much emotions I had hung on my on 4th of July. For those listening, I have a 4th of July party. I live just outside of Los Angeles. We have a nice yard with a pool and stuff like that. And for the last, like 8 years, like we've thrown like a big Rager 4th of July party, and there's no stand-up show at it. There's no performance components, but it's probably like, at this point, it's like 70% comedians because the musician rate has gone up. But it's a lot of like, you know, writers and comedians and not in any like intentional, it's not some like French soiree salon. Like it's just like, it's the people my brother and I know. And so it's all mostly like comedy people or you know, musicians or like fun creative civilians and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what's nice about it is that, you know, there's no show element. It's just a social event, but it's such a raging social event. There's so much to do at it, like that it's the first time a lot of people who spend a lot of time around each other actually get to socialize. And like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love throwing a party, but my favorite part of a party is not like the raging craziness of it. It's, I love being able to create an environment where people can have fun, you know, and let go of all their bullshit. But then also like, I love when I get to introduce two people who I think are great to each other who have never met. Like my gold example is always the first one we ever threw. I got to introduce Rich Slayton, who does a lot of works in MMA and game announcing and all this crazy stuff. And it's just like, and is one of the filthier comedians I've ever met. And he's one of my favorite people. And I introduced him to Lisa Curry, who is like, to me, like one of the funniest human beings alive. And they had never met. and like getting to introduce them and watch them talk for 3 hours and be silly. And I'm just like, this makes me happy. This is two people I love getting to meet and become friends. And for me, that's so much what's fun about the party. Like losing that really pulled the, so I think even after we're out, until I'm able to like get that back on its feet, I'm never going to feel quite right. Cause I really do like it's, I've got like, you know, it's almost like half and half. It's like half of my life is working towards Halloween. And then when Halloween completes, it is time to prepare for 4th of July. And then once 4th of July is done, it's begin preparing for Halloween. And like, those are my two anchor points of the year. It's just like July and October.
Right.
And so I will be sad about that. And, you know, and the other one will be like, you know, what does this mean for haunt stuff? Because like, if I don't get haunt stuff, I'm not sure if we're in a world I want to live in.
Yeah, of course.
But like, so, you know, for me, it's very few. Like I feel very grateful that I live a pretty small life anyways. So like, there's not a ton. My ultimate answer is my girlfriend's house, but I'm going to stop for a poke bowl along the way.
Yeah.
Because those are the only two things I really miss. Is poke bowls are the hardest things to kind of like order out. I'm still working on it. I'm figuring out. I'm making phone calls and brokering deals. And then I have not seen my girlfriend in person in a month. So
oh wow.
I want to go hang out with her and just give her a big hug, and then as I'm holding her behind her back, just fill my mouth with raw fish and rice.
Yeah. What's your favorite poke bowl place?
There are two in town. Both are good. One is called Poke Stop, which I believe is some sort of a chain, possibly. And they're fine. There's a place called Creation that does poke bowls, sushi burritos, and regular rolls.
I'm pretty sure I went there. Yeah,
that's a little closer to my house, and I enjoy Creation just because they have a few more options on stuff. And really like. You know, I love the fish on it's great, but really like I'll just go ape shit on some veggies, and I'll just, you know, my quote is always give me as much seaweed salad as you're legally allowed.
Right.
And so like, I don't know, it's just that combination. I think when I started eating healthier, I had to find new comfort foods, because a few years ago I hit the 30s and it was like, I need to be, you know, like I'm in my 30s. I still would like to have kids. I need to be able to chase their asses around and be spry and not be like, you know, crippled, unable to move dad by the time I have kids. So I was like, I got to start taking this shit a little more seriously, and didn't do anything crazy. It's not like I'm some fitness guy. I mean, we can still rub guts, like, and have a rainbow will still shoot out Care Bear style. But you know, part of it for me was, okay, what are foods you like that are like healthy that you can turn into like something that you can like eat when you're sad, or do as a celebration that isn't pizza and mac and cheese, and make those more of like still around. You know, I ate mac and cheese literally earlier today.
Yeah.
But like, and poke bowls were a thing I had never had. I didn't know what they were. Thought they were a thing you catch Pokemon with. And knew that would make you laugh, you son of a bitch. That fucking Neo dad joke.
One of my favorite memories of all time is a memory of you performing at an open mic, and there were like maybe 6 people in the audience, and I laughed at one of your jokes, and you just went, that Mike Valdes giggle. I love it.
Well, you do. You have as someone with a branded laugh. Like, I understand when I meet other people with branded laughs.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, stay out of Laugh Town. But
yeah.
But you know, occasionally, like, that's one of my favorite things. Like when you can hear a very specific person laugh at something.
Yes.
You just like, no, it's like, well, I got them. Like,
yeah.
And yours are like, it's like, all right, I'm gonna throw this and this together, and I bet, there it is.
I love it. Where can people find you, Kyle? Let's, because
hiding under my desk, sobbing.
What do you have to promote? I know you have This Is Rad.
Yeah, sure,
I know you
have.
have.
Stuff. I have a podcast called This Is Rad, which we'll get you on in the next week or so. Here.
I love it. Yeah,
because I'm doing the reach outs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's, I think you'll be the first like new guest since we've gone in quarantine.
Oh, really?
I was just, because like things are hard, and so like part of my thought was like, for the listeners, you know, it's like, well, so many people that I have close connection with are also a lot of our heavy hitter favorites.
Yeah.
So for like a month, I was like, we're just gonna go almost every like event thing Rad can do, and we're just gonna do a month of it. So we did a Goods from the Woods crossover. We did a new D&D episode.
Yep.
Oh, we had you know, Keith and Tom from the Mean Boys on. You know, we're just doing this run. But I was like, this is all well and good. I do have to remember how to book guests at some point instead of just going, hey, all my friends, come be funny while we feel weird. But so This Is Rad. It's a podcast about positivity without being a fucking dork or a dick about it. Like,
yeah.
I find that so many positive thinking things are condescending or dumb or bad. But I also try to be a positive person. And I saw so many podcasts that were just like, that's dumb. And I was like, I find make more friends with people when you're like, oh shit, you also like fill in the blank arbitrary thing. So we've been doing it for 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah.
And you know, people seem to enjoy it. And we built literally, like, I mean, everybody says this, but like literally the best community of like listeners and people. Like I don't know what I did to like deserve the listener base that we have, because they are, you know, first of all, alive. Blows my mind, because I literally, when we started our Patreon, I literally had to explain to people, like, you guys don't understand. I don't check the back end at all. I just post it out there and then I have to get back to work. So I don't know you guys exist. It's breaking my brain.
Yeah.
But, you know, present company included, like some of the coolest people who listen and interact with us on it. So I'm really proud of that. This is rad. I do it with my dear friend, Matthew Burnside.
Yeah.
We come out every Wednesday. We are independent, so no network. We do it all ourselves. And so you can check that out. We've got some real humdingers episodes. If you dig through that back catalog, we have a 7-hour 2-part explanation of the Invisibles from Grant Morrison. And it is not an issue by issue thing. It is me and my fellow chaos magician friend Brent Schmidt breaking down chaos magic, the nature of the universe, all sorts of shit. It's real fun. You know, so I have that. I have a horror podcast I started last year with my dear friend Jen Saunderson. We are both obsessed with horror movies, and it's 90% of what we talk about when we hang out anyways. And so at one point we realized we should maybe just turn it into a show. And we are actually weekly right now on that, because we're during quarantine doing a movie club where each week her and I trade off picking a movie. And then we sit and talk about it for like an hour and a half. You can go back and listen. We're on our 4th episode this week for the movie club. We've so far done Torso, the Italian Giallo, which was a Jen pick, which is great. It's an awesome, sleazy ass Giallo movie. I picked Among the Living, which is a very upsetting French film that's on Shudder. That's from the guys who made Inside. Do with that information what you will. And if you don't know, don't look it up. And then we just did Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is a movie that everybody but me loves.
Really? Why is that?
Go listen to the episode. I go on at quite length about it. I don't like that movie. And so we've been going back and forth on those. They've been a ton of fun. There are a few things in life more fun than just like sitting talking about horror movies with Jen Saunderson. So like it's a fun time. And then I am the producer on the Jackie and Laurie show. Not like they need a plug, but if you're a comedian out there listening to this, it's for 1 hour a week. 2 of the greatest comedians of all time sit and talk shit and talk about the kind of comedy stuff other podcasts don't talk about, because they're not talking about like the history of it or the reverence. They're talking about their process of making comedy. And it's 2 people who never stop making comedy. They are both machines. They are both well-oiled, skilled machines. And you could do a lot worse as a comedian than just listening to every single episode of that show. You wouldn't be a worse comedian after listening to their show. So that's worth listening to. I love working on it. And I have a couple albums out. I'll promote the 2 good ones that are available on Apple and Spotify.
They're all good, man.
I have an album called I'm a Person from 2016 that is recorded at Meltdown, and then on Apple and Spotify. And then I have one that came out last year called Absolute Terror. Probably I feel like the one I just did will always be the one I think is best until the next one comes out. Because I thought, I'm a Person's as good as comedy can get. Now I listen to it and go, I changed huge parts of this, versus how I do it now. But I like bands that just kind of open source their development process through their work.
Of course.
Like, being a big fan of stuff like, all bands basically, but like a Neil Young or something like that, where it's just like, I'm just going to keep putting shit out. Is awesome. And so kind of doing the Carlin thing of just every 3 years, hopefully I've got an hour's worth and I'll go do. I've kind of got a loose date for the next one, so go check out Absolute Terror now while I finish the second half of the next hour. Yeah,
man, for sure. And you're working on a new one now, right?
Yeah. It's I don't think I've said the title publicly yet, so I'll maybe wait on that.
Yeah,
but I've got a loose date, location, and title, and a half an hour's worth of stuff already, and that's awesome. The fastest the record has come together. So I'm a little nervous.
That's great. Yeah, man. I totally get that.
And they're all on my label, Radland Records. You can follow Radland Records on Spotify and Instagram, or on Instagram and Twitter. If you do message them, just know that you are messaging my girlfriend Taylor and not me, because she runs the social media, because I'm bad at it. Like, the only reason that I have social media is to interact with people from podcasts like you.
Yeah.
And so, it's that kind of thing. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should promote. That's probably enough, right?
I think so.
I always feel like such
the
a
only
dick
thing.
Like, what do you want to promote? And other people are like, here's my Twitter. It's all I got. And I'm like, here's my 19 things, because I can't say no.
The only thing you forgot is that the name of your horror podcast is Everything is Scary, right?
Oh, what did I say?
You didn't say it.
Oh, yeah. Everything is Scary. The podcast
That's okay.
Everything is Scary.
Yeah. It's a good one. I listen to all those podcasts. They're all really fun.
Podcasting is my favorite form of media.
Absolutely.
And most of my entertainment is podcast stuff. Especially when I'm working, because I drive so much because I live outside of the city. That like it's a format that I really love and I really try to support. And because it is, I maintain like the last truly like independent media format. And as companies and corporations try to like slowly take away people's abilities to like speak freely in exchange for like great documentaries about tiger criminals, they make it harder and harder. So the fact that there are people out there every day starting stuff and making things and buying cheap recording equipment and doing whatever their weird thing into the world is, like the number of things I've seen succeed that started off of something that would have been said too niche by a guy in a suit who's never made anything before, like really gives me hope for the future, because it's a scary industry being in entertainment. And anytime you can find that it's like, oh, there are ways that you can be empowered to do stuff. And for so many people out there don't even have the option of living in Los Angeles. And so like, that's not even part of the thing. The fact that you can do so much stuff in podcasting is such an incredible, even with YouTube, they make it harder and harder to find stuff, and you can get it out there, but it's harder. Like, whereas podcasting, it's just like, it's just cool. But there's a whole kind of growing generation of like personalities, and shit like that, that come out of this, and across the board, everything from like Chapo Trap House to the Bechtel Cast to Blank Check to Last Podcast on the Left. Like, these are all these kind of incredible things that are like made by very smart people who might not traditionally get seen by kind of like boring, short-sighted executives.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, Kyle. Thanks for everything, man, for your time and for just being an inspirational dude and for your kindness.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man, all that stuff. For me, if you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at Mike Valdes, on Twitter at I am Mike Valdes, and you can go to whoismikevaldes.com to find out the answer to that question. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen.
He doesn't shout out, but his OnlyFans is also pretty great.
Yeah, it is pretty great.
Just electric teddy bear.
Yeah, man. They actually pay me to put clothes on. So
but like a lot of layers, so it's still a fetish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, oh, look, he's wearing 19 t-shirts. I didn't even know Cursive made 19 t-shirts.
That was a reference for only me, but I love it. I love it so much. I only have 17 cursive t-shirts, though.
The only amount they've made.
Yeah, exactly. The only amount
you gotta get that 20th anniversary Ugly Organ shirt.
Right.
25th Domestic is right around the corner, so that's 17, 18, 19.
Right. Oh,
this is for no one except maybe. I like to assume Tim Casher silently listens to your show.
Oh, I'd love it.
That's a fun game. Pick somebody you like who would absolutely not listen to your work and assume they listen regularly. That's one of my favorite games.
That's really tough. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'd pick like Pete Holmes or something. Yeah. Pete Holmes would never listen to my podcast. If you pick
somebody who's like a weird pick, like you find out like Eric Stone Street secretly loves your show.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's like not a way where you can like, you can't like brag about it because people are like, what?
like the Modern Family guy?
Like people are more like not impressed. They're more just like, how do you know that and why does he do it?
Right. Oh man. That's so good. Yeah, man.
Guys, I don't mean to brag, but Kathleen Keener tweets at us about the show sometimes with her thoughts. Like, why? I don't know.
Not to brag, but Michael J. Fox emailed me last week about how much he loves my show.
Turns out me and Michael J. Fox, both big boosters for Extreme Ghostbusters. I was really defending it on the show. His people got us in touch.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, anyway, guys, that has been an episode. This is Childlike at Best with Mike Valdes. Subscribe, tell all your friends so we can grow this family. Review us and give us 5 stars. Say something nice. Bye, besties.